We often grow up believing that success is something we chase, a goal at the end of a long road, marked by certain achievements, certain possessions, certain titles. We're told that once we reach that level, once we have the promotion, the car, the money, the applause, then we can finally call ourselves successful. But that's not how success actually works. That's not how humans actually operate. And if we build our lives around that model, we're setting ourselves up for an endless cycle of striving and never arriving. Because success isn't a milestone. It's not something that happens when others hand it to you or when you cross some arbitrary finish line. It's a mindset. It starts long before the results show up. It begins with how we choose to see ourselves and the world around us. It's about belief. And belief doesn't come from evidence. It comes from vision. It comes from a deep sense of why you do what you do and the courage to live as if you already are what you're becoming. We all know people who wait. They wait for the title before they act like a leader. They wait for validation before they speak up. They wait for permission before they take initiative. But leaders, real leaders, don't wait. They step forward, even when they don't have all the answers. They act with clarity and confidence, even before they have the credentials. Not because they're arrogant, but because they understand that success isn't something that happens to you. It's something you decide. And when you begin to act from that place, not from desperation, not from insecurity, not from needing to prove something, but from conviction, people feel it. People notice when someone believes in what they're doing. It's contagious because belief is magnetic. And people don't follow people with the most impressive resumes. They follow people who show up like they mean it. Think about any great leader, innovator, or visionary. They didn't start acting like leaders after the world crowned them. They acted like leaders when no one was watching. They made decisions based on values, not visibility. They carried themselves as people of purpose long before anyone handed them power. And over time, their mindset shaped their actions, and their actions shaped their results. That's how it works. Who you become is a reflection of how you behave when no one is clapping, when no one is validating, when no one is calling you successful yet. That's where the foundation is built. There's a myth that confidence comes after success, that we earn the right to stand tall once we've collected enough external evidence. But it's actually the reverse. Confidence is the soil success grows in. And confidence isn't loud. It's not about pretending. It's quiet, steady. It's rooted in integrity, in knowing who you are and why you do what you do. It's in choosing to show up with discipline, excellence, and generosity even when there's no reward on the other side yet. That kind of confidence, that mindset of success isn't about faking it. It's not a show. It's not a costume you wear to impress others. It's about consistency. It's about showing up every day like the person you're becoming, not the person you were, not the person people expect you to be, the person you've decided to grow into. And it doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require having all the answers. It requires alignment. When your behavior matches your vision, you begin to close the gap between who you are and who you're meant to be. That's where real momentum begins. Not when the world changes, but when you change. But here's the problem. Many people think that if they act like they're already successful, they'll come off as arrogant. They confuse confidence with ego. But true confidence is humble. It doesn't need to dominate the room. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't pretend to know everything. It listens, it learns, it grows. And yet it walks with certainty because it knows its direction. So what does that look like practically? It means waking up and making decisions based on values, not moods. It means taking ownership of your time, your habits, your attitude, even when no one else is holding you accountable. It means treating your craft with respect, not because someone is watching, but because you're watching. You know what matters to you, and you know what it will take to get there. When you carry yourself as if you're already successful, you're not pretending to be someone you're not. You're stepping into the truth of who you can be. You're refusing to let doubt or fear dictate your posture. You're choosing to operate with discipline even when it's hard, with grace even when it's unrecognized, with generosity even when it's inconvenient. That's not an act. That's leadership. And slowly, sometimes invisibly, something shifts. The way people respond to you changes. The way opportunities find you changes. The way your own thoughts speak to you changes. Because now, you're not acting as if. You are. The inner belief becomes outer reality. We have to stop chasing success like it's some distant event. We have to stop waiting to become who we want to be. The time to live with intention is not after the promotion, after the breakthrough, after the applause. The time is now. You want to be a great leader? Lead yourself today. You want to build something meaningful? Show up with excellence today. You want to be respected? Start by respecting your own process today. Success is not a destination. It's a decision made in quiet moments, repeated daily, that gradually transforms who you are. And the people who truly make a difference, they don't act like they're waiting for something. They act like they've already found it. Not because they're pretending, but because they've chosen to believe. We often think we need to believe in ourselves before we can act, that confidence needs to come first, that somehow once we've found that deep inner assurance, we'll start showing up the right way. But the truth is, it rarely works like that. Belief doesn't lead to action as often as we think. More often than not, it's the other way around. It's action that leads to belief. Behavior drives belief. If you want to believe in yourself, don't wait for it. Act first. Let your actions prove to your brain that you're capable, that you're trustworthy, that you're serious. Because our brains pay attention to our patterns. The way we behave tells our minds what kind of person we are. When you keep promises to yourself, when you follow through, when you show up even when it's hard, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to build trust with yourself. And that trust becomes belief. We usually associate trust with other people, but self-trust might be the most critical kind. If you don't trust yourself, how can you lead? How can you grow? How can you navigate uncertainty with confidence? Trust is built, not given. And it's built through consistent behavior. Small daily actions. Showing up when you said you would. Taking the next step when it would be easier to hide. Doing the hard thing when no one is watching. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. It's not about never failing. It's about getting back up when you do. When you respond to failure with resilience, your brain doesn't record the failure as the story. It records the recovery. It says, I fall down, but I get back up. And over time, those small responses build a belief system. One that says, I'm the kind of person who follows through. I'm the kind of person who figures it out. I'm the kind of person who doesn't quit. Most people think belief comes from a moment of inspiration. That one great speech or one life-changing event suddenly flips the switch and now they're filled with belief. But inspiration fades. Motivation fades. What stays with us is what we do again and again. It's our habits that shape how we see ourselves. It's our behavior that writes our story. Think about someone who wants to get in shape. If they sit on the couch all day hoping to feel like an athlete before going to the gym, they'll never go. But if they start going, even when they feel unsure, they begin to change the way they see themselves. Not because of the result, but because of the routine. I go to the gym. I push through discomfort. I show up. That's where belief is born. In the same way, if you want to see yourself as a leader, don't wait until someone calls you one. Act like one now. Lead where you are. Take responsibility. Serve others. Make decisions based on values. Communicate with clarity. Step up in the small moments. The behavior comes first. The belief follows. That's the mistake we often make. We wait for the title. We wait for permission. But leadership doesn't come with a badge. It comes with behavior. You become a leader not when someone gives you authority, but when you start behaving like someone who takes ownership. Ownership of your choices, your attitude, your relationships, your vision. There's a reason athletes practice visualizing success. There's a reason high performers rehearse excellence. It's because the body doesn't always follow the mind. Sometimes the mind has to follow the body. When you act like the person you want to become, you send a message not just to others, but to yourself. But it's important to understand, That this isn't about pretending. It's not about faking confidence or swagger. It's not about putting on a mask. It's about choosing behavior that aligns with your values and your vision, even if you don't feel ready. Especially if you don't feel ready. That's the paradox. The more you act like the version of yourself you're striving to become, the more you believe you can be that person. Not because you're giving yourself evidence. Our belief system is shaped by the story we tell ourselves. And that story is shaped by what we do day in and day out. You can't outthink your way to belief. You have to act your way there. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in the presence of it. The moment you take action, you disrupt the fear loop. You interrupt the lie that says, I'm not ready. Because readiness isn't a feeling. It's a decision. You decide to step in. You decide to move. You decide to behave like someone who is capable. And that decision changes everything. And once you start to believe, something else happens. You become more consistent, more focused, more steady, and others can feel that. Belief is felt. When someone speaks or leads or creates from a place of internal belief, it resonates. Because it's not rooted in ego or performance, it's rooted in integrity, in alignment, and we trust people who are aligned. So if you want belief, don't search for it, build it, stack it, layer it, one disciplined action at a time. Let your actions speak to your brain louder than your doubts ever could. Let your behavior shape your identity, because at the end of the day, the story we believe about ourselves isn't written in our heads, it's written in our habits. If you behave like someone who matters, you will begin to believe that you do. If you behave like someone who leads, you will begin to believe that you can. If you behave like someone who keeps showing up, you will begin to believe that you're the kind of person who finishes. You don't need to feel ready, you need to move, you need to behave your way toward belief. Because belief doesn't make you act, acting is what makes you believe. Most people spend their lives chasing outcomes. They set goals, they make plans, they dream big. All in the hope that one day they'll reach a destination that finally allows them to feel like they've become someone. They believe that identity is something you earn after you've proven yourself, that once the outcome is achieved, then they'll finally deserve the title, leader, creator, entrepreneur, athlete, artist, whatever it is. But that thinking is backward. The truth is, the identity comes before the outcome. It has to. You don't get to succeed and then decide who you are. You decide who you are and then you behave in alignment with that decision. The outcome is the result of identity, not the other way around. We act based on who we believe we are, and when that belief is rooted in intention and clarity, then the results take care of themselves. This is a shift that many people never make. They wait. They think, once I've built the business, I'll call myself an entrepreneur. Once I have a team, I'll act like a leader. Once I've published something, I'll be a writer. But that waiting creates a gap, and that gap becomes an excuse. It allows us to hold back, to play small, to stay comfortable, because we haven't yet earned the identity. But the people who create real impact don't wait for the world to grant them permission. They choose who they are before the world has a chance to agree. And that choice, that internal shift in identity, becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Because your identity drives your standards drive your behavior, and your behavior drives your results. It all starts with how you see yourself. If you don't see yourself as a disciplined person, you won't act with discipline. If you don't see yourself as someone who leads, you won't step into leadership moments. If you don't see yourself as worthy, you'll constantly sabotage your progress. That's why the identity comes first, because who you think you are will always win over what you want to achieve. The mind is powerful. It's always trying to make your actions match your beliefs. That's why when you say, I'm not good at public speaking, your body responds with anxiety the moment you're asked to speak. Not because you can't, but because your identity says, this isn't who I am. But what happens if you shift that belief? What if instead of saying, I'm not a speaker, you say, I'm learning to become someone who communicates with clarity and impact? Suddenly, your brain has new instructions. Suddenly, your actions can begin to align with a new identity. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about deciding who you are and then acting like it every single day. Not because you're trying to fool anyone, but because you understand that transformation doesn't begin with results. It begins with ownership. Take anyone you admire, someone who's built something meaningful, someone who leads with purpose, someone who's achieved something remarkable. If you look closely, you'll see they made the identity decision early on. They decided, this is who I am, this is what I value, this is how I lead. Long before the results were visible, long before the world clapped, long before the outcome was secure. They lived the identity, and the outcomes followed. There's a difference between outcome-based goals and identity-based goals. An outcome goal says, I want to run a marathon. An identity goal says, I'm a runner. The first is a finish line. The second is a way of life. The first ends, the second evolves. And it's the second that leads to lasting change, because identity isn't tied to one result. It's tied to who you're becoming. When we act from identity, we tap into something deeper than motivation. Motivation is fickle. It shows up when conditions are perfect. But identity creates consistency. If you see yourself as someone who shows up with excellence, you don't need to feel motivated. You just act in alignment with who you are. And that alignment creates trust, not just with others, but with yourself. You begin to build an internal reputation. You start to say, I'm the kind of person who follows through. I'm the kind of person who keeps learning. I'm the kind of person who leads with values, not ego. And once that identity is set, your behavior begins to match. You start living into that belief, not because someone else told you who you are, but because you made the choice. We're always becoming something. Every action is a vote for the kind of person we believe ourselves to be. So the question is, are you casting votes for the version of yourself you want to grow into? Or are you reinforcing the limitations of your past? The people who change the world don't wait for outcomes to confirm their identity. They commit to the identity first. They carry themselves as leaders before anyone follows. They operate with discipline before the results show up. They speak from purpose before the spotlight arrives. And because of that, the outcomes eventually come, but by then they're just a reflection of something deeper. The world is simply catching up to who they already decided to be. And that's what it means to act as if you're already successful. Not to fake it, not to play a role, but to step into the identity of someone who lives with purpose, alignment, and intention. Someone who shows up every day as if the outcome is inevitable, not because it's guaranteed, but because their behavior says it's possible. You don't become successful and then start acting like it. You act like someone who is successful, and that identity becomes the engine that pulls the outcomes toward you. And when the results arrive, when the title comes, when the recognition shows up, it won't feel like a surprise. It'll feel like a confirmation, not of what you've achieved, but of who you've already become. How we show up matters more than we think. People are watching, not in a performative way, not in a judgmental way, but in a human way, because we're wired to notice posture, tone, energy, presence. Before anyone hears a word you say, before they read your resume or understand your background, they respond to how you enter the room. And how you show up tells them a lot about what to expect from you. We all want to be taken seriously. We want to be seen as credible, capable, confident. But credibility doesn't begin with external validation. It starts with how we carry ourselves, how we walk into a meeting, how we speak up in uncertainty, how we treat people even when there's nothing to gain. That behavior creates an impression, and that impression becomes influence. Because people don't follow the loudest voice. They follow the most consistent one, the one that feels grounded, the one that feels real. The mistake many people make is thinking they'll show up better once they've made it, once they're promoted, once they're in charge, once they're successful. But that mindset misses the point. You don't become a leader when someone gives you authority. You become a leader when you choose to carry yourself like one with clarity, with humility, with responsibility, regardless of your title. Showing up well doesn't mean pretending to have all the answers. It means being present. It means standing for something. It means communicating with purpose, not performance. It's about tone, not volume. Consistency, not perfection. It's not about impressing people. It's about showing them someone worth trusting. And trust, unlike attention, takes time to build. But the first step is how you show up. People can feel when you're grounded. They can sense when you're aligned with your values. When your body language, your words, your decisions, and your energy are all telling the same story, people notice that alignment doesn't scream. It resonates. And resonance is what creates connection. Connection is what builds teams, and teams are what build great things. You could be the smartest person in the room, but if the way you show up feels chaotic, insecure, or inconsistent, people won't know how to engage with you. People want clarity, not confusion. They want stability, not volatility. They want to trust your presence before they trust your plan. That's why leadership, real leadership, starts long before decisions are made. It starts the moment you enter the room. Think about someone you've admired, not for what they've achieved, but for how they carry themselves. Chances are they weren't the flashiest, they weren't trying to be the center of attention, but there was something about the way they held space, the way they listened, the way they spoke when it mattered. That kind of presence is earned. It's built through intention, not accident. When you show up with integrity, people may not notice immediately. But over time, they will remember how you made them feel. They'll remember that you were calm under pressure, that you took responsibility instead of placing blame, that you made them feel seen. Those moments may seem small, but they're everything. Because influence isn't built in the big speeches. It's built in the daily presence. It's built in how you show up when things are uncertain. The truth is, most of us spend too much time worrying about what people think of us, and not enough time focusing on what people feel from us. There's a difference. What people think can be swayed, but what people feel, that stays with them. If you walk into a room with clarity and calm, people will mirror it. If you walk in distracted and defensive, people will react to that too. Emotional energy is contagious, and how you show up is the thermostat for everyone around you. This is especially true in leadership. If you're anxious, your team feels it. If you're distracted, your team mirrors it. If you show up late, dismissive, reactive, they will follow that example, not because they're trying to be disrespectful, but because we follow emotional cues. On the other hand, if you show up with intentionality, with focus, with humility, they respond in kind. They don't just listen to your words, they absorb your way of being. This isn't about being perfect. You don't have to be fearless or flawless, but you do have to be intentional. You do have to know what you stand for. You do have to take responsibility for the emotional tone you bring into spaces. Because people are looking to you not just for answers, but for how to be in the face of pressure, uncertainty, and change. If you want people to treat you like a leader, start showing up like one now. Not later, not when you get the promotion, not when things are easy. Now. That means preparing. That means listening more than you speak. That means being fully present, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. It means being someone others can count on, not because you always say the right thing, but because you consistently show up in a way that feels honest and clear. You may never know the full impact of your presence. Someone might make a brave decision just because you sat beside them with confidence. Someone might step into their own leadership because they saw how calmly you handled a crisis. Someone might feel more valued because you looked them in the eye and actually listened. These aren't outcomes you can measure, but they are outcomes that matter. And that's the point. You don't show up well because it guarantees recognition. You show up well because it's the right thing to do. Because it creates safety, clarity, trust. Because it elevates the room, not just your reputation. Because it makes you someone worth following, even if no one's following yet. So every room you walk into is an opportunity. Every conversation, every meeting, every moment, a chance to lead, to align, to build trust. Not with noise, not with bravado, but with quiet confidence, with consistency, with presence. Because people don't just respond to what you do. They respond to how you do it. They respond to how you show up. So make it count. We often talk about confidence as if it's something you either have or you don't. Like some people were just born with it, while the rest of us are left trying to fake it, hoping nobody notices the cracks. We treat confidence like a prize, something you earn once you've done enough, proven enough, become enough. But that's not what confidence is. Confidence isn't a trophy. It's not the result of pretending. Confidence is a byproduct, and the source is alignment. When your behavior is aligned with your values, when your actions reflect your purpose, when your words match your beliefs, that's when confidence shows up. Not in an arrogant way, not in a loud way, but in a steady, grounded, unmistakable way. Real confidence isn't about volume. It's about clarity. It's about knowing who you are, what you stand for, and why you do what you do, and then showing up that way consistently. And that's why some of the most confident people you'll ever meet aren't the ones talking the most. They're the ones whose presence feels rooted, centered. There's no need to prove anything, no need to perform, because their identity and their behavior are in sync. That alignment creates trust, not just with others, but with themselves. And from that trust, confidence grows. The problem is, most people look for confidence in all the wrong places. They chase external validation. They look for applause, awards, promotions, as if someone else's approval will finally make them feel whole. But you can have the resume, the title, the recognition, and still feel empty inside if how you're living isn't aligned with who you are. That's why imposter syndrome shows up even in the most outwardly successful people. It's not because they're not good enough. It's because deep down, they know something is out of sync. Maybe they've built an image that doesn't match their truth. Maybe they've been chasing someone else's definition of success. Maybe they've been compromising their values to get ahead. Whatever it is, the result is the same: a shaky sense of self. A fragile kind of confidence that breaks the moment things get hard. But when you live in alignment, something shifts. You stop needing to convince people. You stop needing constant reassurance. Because you're not trying to be someone, you're simply being who you already are. And the more you live that way, the more you trust yourself. That's the root of real confidence. Self-trust. Not perfection, not popularity. Just the quiet, unshakable belief that you're being true to yourself. Of course, alignment doesn't happen by accident. It takes intention. It takes self-awareness. You have to be honest enough to ask, what do I actually believe in? What do I care about? What kind of person do I want to be? And once you've answered that, you have to be brave enough to live like it matters. You don't get confidence from mimicking someone else's voice. You get it from finding your own. That voice might not be polished at first. It might not be loud, but it will be real, and real is powerful. Because real can't be shaken. When your voice comes from alignment, people don't just hear your words, they feel your conviction. That's what creates influence. The world is full of noise. Everyone's trying to look like they've got it together. But the people who make a lasting impact aren't the ones with the slickest image. They're the ones with the strongest foundation. They're not reacting to every opinion or chasing every trend. They're rooted in something deeper. That's what alignment gives you. It doesn't make the path easy, but it makes it clear. And when the path is clear, confidence becomes natural, not forced, not faked, just there, like a quiet companion walking beside you. Because you're not spending energy pretending. You're not wasting time comparing. You're focused. You're grounded, you're showing up as yourself, flaws and all, and you're doing the work. Confidence built on alignment doesn't crumble in failure because it was never built on success. It was built on purpose. So even when things go wrong, even when the project fails or the outcome disappoints, the foundation remains. You still know who you are. You still know why you showed up. And that's what gives you the courage to try again. And this kind of confidence is magnetic. People are drawn to authenticity. They're drawn to leaders who know themselves, who stand for something, who don't need to dominate the room to command respect. That's what alignment gives you, not just the strength to act, but the consistency to lead. But here's the part we often overlook. Alignment doesn't just affect how you feel. It affects how others feel around you. When you're aligned, you give people permission to be themselves. When you speak honestly, you create space for others to do the same. When you lead from values, you invite trust. And when you model real confidence, the kind that comes from within, you help others